California is supposed to be the place where homeownership goes to die. The numbers make that feel true. Statewide, the median value of an owner-occupied home is about $734,000. That is more than double the national level. So when someone says there are still cheap places to buy a house in California, most people assume it has to be an exaggeration. It is not. Because once you get far enough away from the coast, the famous metros, and the version of California people see in movies, the housing map changes fast. And that is what this video is really about. Not just where California gets cheaper, but why it gets cheaper. In some places, the trade-off is distance. In others, it is lower incomes, weaker local opportunity, thinner infrastructure, or a much harder day-to-day reality. So this is not just a countdown. It is a map of where California stops looking like California. Let's start at number 12. Number 12, Mendota. The median home value here is about $281,000. By California standards, that is shockingly low. But the rest of the numbers explain it. Median household income is just over $50,000. Poverty is high. High school completion is low. Broadband access trails the state average. So Mendota does not feel like a hidden bargain suburb. It feels like a place where affordability is tied to a much tougher local economy. Cheap, yes. Easy, no. Number 11, California City. Median home value, $278,000. This one feels different right away. Income is a little stronger. Broadband is better. Education levels are better than some cities lower on this list. But then you hit the big number. The average commute is more than 43 minutes. That is far above the state average. So California City does not read like a total collapse. It reads like a trade. You pay less for the house because you give up access, convenience, and proximity. This is cheap California through distance. Number 10, Wasco. Median home value, $273,600. Wasco still feels like a working city. Owner occupancy is decent. The commute is manageable. But the cushion underneath the housing market is still thin. Income is modest. Broadband is below the state average. Poverty is elevated. So Wasco looks affordable, but not carefree. It feels like the kind of place where ownership is still possible because the local economy runs on a smaller scale than the California people usually picture. Number 9, McFarland. Median home value, $272,700. McFarland is affordable in a very specific inland California way. Households are large. Labor force participation is solid. Owner occupancy is respectable. But poverty is still high. Education levels are low. Bachelor's degree attainment is extremely limited, so McFarland does not feel like a mystery discount. It feels like a working-class ownership market, a place where buying is still possible, but only because the local opportunity structure is much narrower than the statewide image of California. Number 8, Arvin. Median home value, $262,700. Arvin is one of the clearest examples of a place that is cheap because the pressure is real. Households are huge. Labor force participation is strong, and yet poverty is still very high. Educational attainment is weak. The uninsured rate is elevated. Broadband is actually better than you might expect. But the overall picture is still the same. Arvin is affordable because the economic strain shows up all over the data. This is not cheap by accident. It is cheap because life here comes with a heavier load. Number 7, Coalinga. Median home value, $262,400. Now the story starts to shift. Because Coalinga looks a little sturdier than its price suggests. Income is stronger here than in many places on this list. The commute is short, broadband is decent, education is still below the state average, and poverty is still high. But compared with the cities around it, Coalinga feels less like a distress story and more like a value story. Not glamorous, not famous, but more balanced than the price alone would lead you to expect. Number 6, Taft. Median home value, $252,600. And this may be the strongest pure value case in the entire video. Income is relatively solid. The commute is short. High school completion is strong. The uninsured rate is lower than the California average. Now, it is not perfect. Broadband still lags. Poverty is still above the state level, but Taft feels different. It does not sound like a place you buy because you ran out of options. It sounds like a place where the trade-offs and the price are more evenly matched. Cheap, yes, but also surprisingly functional. Number 5, Huron, median home value, $251,700. Huron is a reminder that a low price can hide a very heavy reality. Owner occupancy is extremely low. Poverty is high. High school completion is low. Broadband is weak. Bachelor's degree attainment is almost non-existent. And yet labor force participation is high. That is what makes this place so telling. People are working. People are trying. But the ownership market is still thin, and the broader social picture is under pressure. Huron is not just cheap. It is fragile. Number 4, Corcoran, median home value, $236,100. Corcoran is affordable, but it does not feel especially resilient. Owner occupancy is better than Huron. The commute is manageable, but broadband is weak. Educational attainment is extremely low. Labor force participation is strikingly soft. So Corcoran does not read like a place that is cheap because it is remote. It reads like a place that is cheap because the local market itself is limited. That is a different kind of warning. Number 3, Avenel, median home value, $228,900. Avenel may be the clearest example on this list of how a cheap number can hide a complicated place. The commute is long. Income is modest. Poverty is elevated. Educational attainment is very weak. The uninsured rate is high. The labor picture is soft. So Avenel is not just a cheap city. It is a city where the data keep pointing in the same direction. Lower home values here are part of a larger pattern of limited mobility, limited cushion, and more daily compromise than the sticker price suggests. Number 2, Blythe, median home value, $225,000. Blythe is one of the few places this low on the list that feels more functional than broken. Income is modest, but not collapsed. Poverty is still elevated, but lower than some cities ranked above it. Broadband is better. The commute is short. Even the broader housing picture feels more manageable. So Blythe comes across less like a distress pocket and more like a true low-cost outlier. Not strong by California standards, but more livable than you might expect for a place this cheap. And number 1, Clear Lake. Median home value, just $214,200. This is the cheapest city in this ranking. But it is also the perfect example of why cheap housing in California always needs a second sentence. Income is low, poverty is high, labor force participation is weak, broadband trails the state, the commute is long, educational attainment is limited. So Clear Lake is not just a cheap lake city in an expensive state. It is a housing market living in a completely different economic universe from the California most outsiders imagine. That is why the price is so low, and that is why the price alone does not tell the whole story. So what does this list really show? It shows that cheap California comes in at least 3 forms. First, there is the distance trade-off, places where homes are cheaper because convenience falls with them. Second, there is the working class inland city pattern. Places where ownership is still possible, but wages, education, and opportunity are thinner. And third, there is the structural weakness version, places where low home values are tightly tied to poverty, weak infrastructure, or a narrow local economy. That is the deeper truth behind cheap houses in California. Sometimes the low price is an opportunity, sometimes it is a warning, and most of the time it is both at once.